Hello and thank you for joining me today. I'm very excited to share with you a bit of my research. Today's lecture will discuss the clarinet works of Indian composer John Mayer. The aim of this presentation is to provide background information on the composer and his style in order for clarinetists to better understand, perform, and teach his works. We will begin with an overview of Mayer's life and career, discuss his main works for clarinet, and we will listen to several movements from both Sargam for solo clarinet and Dance Suite for clarinet and piano. So let's jump right in. John Mayer's life and career spanned 2 continents and 3 genres. He was born to a very poor family in Calcutta, India in 1929. Both Indian and Western classical music were reserved for the wealthy at that time. And considering that Western classical music was not really part of Indian culture, it is really miraculous that Mayer came to be a Western classical musician and composer. He started by studying Western classical violin, and although he never performed Indian classical music, he studied its theories with Guru Sanathan Mukherjee for 10 years. After studying with Meli Mehta, Zubin Mehta's father, Mayer went on to win the Bombay Madrigal Singers All India competition, the prize for which was a scholarship to the Royal Academy of Music in London. So in 1952, Mayer moved to London and started studying violin there. He also studied secondarily composition with Benjamin Frankel, who influenced him to start composing using the 12-tone technique. But outside of school, he studied with Hungarian composer Matthias Seiber, who encouraged him and his experimentation with fusion music, and he really considered Seiber his most influential composition teacher. After his studies at the Royal Academy were cut short, he joined London Philharmonic, went on to play with the Royal Philharmonic, and finally transitioned to a freelance career around 1965 to pursue composition full-time. He really thought that if he was a full-time orchestral musician, he would never be considered seriously in the composition world. Around this time, in 1965, he also formed the group Indo-Jazz Fusions with Jamaican saxophonist Joe Harriott. The group consisted of 5 Indian musicians and 5 jazz musicians, a truly unique combo at the time. After a long period of touring, recording, and taking on many commissions, he joined the faculty at the Birmingham Conservatoire. It's kind of amazing that he joined this faculty because he has no degrees in music. Mayer died in 2004 when he was struck by a car. After a diverse career, Mayer's legacy was that of fusion. His group Indo-Jazz Fusions was a big part of this legacy, and many of his Western classical works combine all 3 of these traditions: Indian classical, Western classical, and jazz. Mayer's compositional style is unique. He was not an Indian composer attempting to write in European style, as he trained and performed with some of the most prestigious Western musical organizations in the world. Nor was he a European composer drawn to the exoticism of Indian music and culture, because Indian music was his culture. He was able to understand the performance difficulties from both the perspective of the Indian and Western performer, which influenced how he composed. Mayer was very prolific and had a very diverse output. He wrote music for choir, voice, orchestra, and chamber music, and he would have wanted to be known as a symphonist. He had major commissioners including James Galway, John McCaw, London Symphony Orchestra, and the BBC. Many of his works combine Western and Indian instrumentation, and many, but not all, are based on Indian theories. Here is a list of Mayer's works that include clarinet. Many of these are unpublished and unrecorded, and some of them unperformed. As you can see, many of his chamber works include Indian instruments, and some of them are named after Indian terms. Today we'll be looking at Raga music for solo clarinet, Sargam for solo clarinet, and Dance Suite for clarinet and piano. Before we move on to discussing Raga music for solo clarinet, let's discuss what Raga is. Raga is the most important aspect of Indian classical music. It is the way in which a performer creates and elaborates a melodic line. There is an old Sanskrit saying that says, "That which tinges the mind with color is raga." The term raga is difficult to define because it consists of many different elements. You can see here that it can be defined as a set of notes used as the basis of a song, and it must follow these certain rules. There is a minimum of 5 notes and a maximum of 7 notes on the ascent, and there's a minimum of 5 notes and a maximum of 7 notes on the descent. But the ascent and the descent can be different. You can see here it must include sa and either ma or pa, and those are just different scale degrees, kind of like different solfege. And it is characterized by emphasizing certain notes. You can see here that vadi is the most important note, the most emphasized note of a raga, and samvadi is the second most emphasized note of a raga. There's distinct ornamentations in different ragas, as well as distinct catchphrases or motives that are used in specific ragas. Based on these elements and other elements that aren't included here, it has been theorized that there are over 35,000 possible ragas that can be made. But out of those 35,000, it must be pleasing to the ear. Ragas can also be associated with different times of day, seasons, events, or feelings, and the feeling is called rasa. Raga music for solo clarinet was composed between 1954 and 57. It was a commission by English clarinetist John McCaw, and it is one of Mayer's earliest published works, and also his earliest piece that incorporates Indian elements into Western classical compositions. It's based on the concept of ragamala, which is defined as a garland of ragas. So each of these 9 short movements are based on a different raga. You can see here on the right side of the screen the names of the movements. And if you've played this piece, you know that each of the movements also has an abbreviation with the time of day that it's associated with. And this piece is preferably for a clarinet. We won't spend a lot of time talking about raga music and the individual movements because this is the piece that Mayer is most well known for. You've probably heard of this piece or know someone, or maybe you've performed it yourself. The reason for this is because it was included in the A-level exams for English clarinetists. Sargam for solo clarinet was composed in the 1990s. It's difficult to tell what exact year because Mayer never dated his scores. He wrote this with the help of English clarinetist Janet Hilton. It was premiered in 1996 at Adrian Bould's Hall by Janet Hilton. It's also based on the concept of ragamala, just like raga music. The name Sargam comes from the first 4 solfege syllables in Indian solfege: sa, re, ga, and ma. And you put them together, it becomes Sargam. So, like raga music, it's comprised of 9 distinct short movements, each based on a different raga. And you can see the raga names here on the right. This is a cycle of ragas that span over 4 days. Now, we've already talked about how Sargam is based on the ragamala concept, the garland of ragas. Ragamala, that term also refers to the painting that is associated with a raga. There's also a poem that's associated with a raga. So the imagery that is associated with this painting is as follows. Malavashri is dressed in green, the color of the parrot. Her complexion is very fair, and her beautiful eyes are large. Exultant with deep love for her lord, she gracefully gathers flowers for the garden. The intricacies and elegance of her garments are beyond description. One glance at her dazzles the eyes. She has built a charming abode for herself and is surrounded by beautiful companions. She is by far the cleverest of them, and of them all she is most loved by Lord Bhairava. Now with that imagery in mind, let's listen to the first movement. Now let's look at the fourth movement, Raga Khammaja, which is associated with the ninth. You can see the scale here, Raga Khammaja, looks very similar to a D major scale, and we omit the E on the way up, and on the way down, we have a C natural instead of a C sharp. You can also see that the vadi, or the most important note, is F sharp, and the samvadi, the second most important note, is B. You can see that Mayer clearly outlines the raga in the first three measures and more expansively in the first two lines. You can see that he follows the raga rule of skipping the E in the first measure where he omits it completely. You can also see that in the third measure, he's ending that little phrase on B, which is the samvadi, and that's a little way that he's emphasizing that note. And you can see at the end of the second line that he is using a C natural instead of a C sharp because that is the descent of the line. Another notable feature of this movement is Mayer's use of metrical cycle, which is an allusion to the concept of tala, or rhythmical cycle, which is used in Indian classical performance. You can see that he cycles between 2/4, then to 2/8, and then to 3/8, and then the cycle repeats. This cycle is consistent throughout the entire movement. Now let's take a look at the ninth movement, Raga Nata, which is associated with the late afternoon. One notable feature of this raga is its use of a catchphrase. You might remember that that's one of the elements that defines a raga. For this raga, the catchphrase is the use of the first, third, fourth scale degree in succession, followed by a double neighbor leading tone. Now we can see that Mayer follows that rule very closely just in the first measure. Now another really notable feature of this movement is the use of the 30-second notes, which are like written out trills, and that's an allusion to the katka ornamentation of Indian classical music. Now this ornamentation is often used to really emphasize certain notes in the melody. So you can see here that when you see 30-second notes, a lot of times they then lead to either the vadi or the samvadi. Dance Suite for Clarinet and Piano was composed between 1979 and 1980 as a commission by English clarinetist Georgina Dobré. The commission was funded by the Arts Council of Great Britain and then premiered in 1980 at the International Clarinet Congress in Denver. It's comprised of 6 contrasting movements. It highlights the multicultural compositional style of Mayer. He incorporates jazz, European traditions, and Asian modes. We will start by looking at the 4th movement, Caprice. The movement begins with this piano ostinato that cycles through 7 different pitches, and because the meter is in 7/8, we have this displacement where the second cycle starts on the and of 4 and creates this different kind of groove in the latter half of the measure, kind of an asymmetrical ostinato. The piano ostinato continues throughout most of this movement, and the clarinet interjects with very rhythmically complex lines that kind of complement the piano ostinato. Every so often, the 2 voices join together in this sweeping gesture that propels into the next section of the movement. The 5th movement of Dance Suite is based on the traditional European form, the waltz. You can clearly hear the waltz influence by the use of traditional triple meter, lyrical and tuneful clarinet melody, and Mayer's indication of tempo giusto. However, Mayer's also undermines these elements of the traditional waltz. As you can see in the opening section, the clarinet provides the melody and the piano offsets its rhythmic integrity with a constant syncopation, kind of always moving an 8th note after the clarinet. In addition, the movement is in a 12-tone compositional style, which is not something you often necessarily associate with a dance form. Finally, there are several sections of straightforward waltz material that are contrasted with harsh, angular, rhythmic, driving sections. The sixth movement of Dance Suite is called Stomp, which is probably my favorite movement to play. It's really upbeat and jazzy, full of syncopation and rhythmically driven the entire time. It uses a pentatonic scale, which is very evocative of Asian culture and Asian musical style. It actually uses the same melodic material found in this movement in a movement of a work for solo piano called Calcutta Nagar, which consists of 18 movements, 18 short movements that are supposed to describe different parts of Calcutta. And the movement dedicated to this melody is describing Chinatown in Calcutta. So it's definitely an allusion to Chinese music. John Mayer's career was devoted to blending cultures and creating great music without the restraint of genre. I've enjoyed researching his unique story and performing his equally unique music. I hope that today's presentation has proved to be useful for you as a musician, performer, and educator. If there's time, I'm happy to take questions now. If there's not, I'm always happy to answer questions via email or through my website provided here. Thank you so much.